Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome to the VAP family of podcasts.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 40 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. And if anybody out there is just coming to this podcast for the first time today, welcome. I want to tell you that this is a podcast where I interview a different veteran-focused nonprofit every single episode, and you get to find out all about the programs and opportunities that each of these organizations has for all of you. Now, last week I mentioned that we did hit 10,000 downloads, and I don't want to make it a habit of putting the stats out there every single week, but I do want to tell you that in just the past week, we went over 11,500. That is a pretty big number to be going in just 1 week. And it appears that the word is getting out. There's a lot of sharing going on. And I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for helping to get the word out to more veterans about these organizations. This week, we have Emily Cherniack from New Politics, and this is one of those organizations that when you hear about it, you're like, wow, I had no idea there was an organization that was out there doing this, and I really think you're going to enjoy this episode. And let me tell you a little bit about Emily. Every personal and professional decision Emily Cherniack has ever made has come from a place that honors service and leadership. From her service in AmeriCorps and employment with City Year AmeriCorps, to being part of the funding team of Be the Change, where she led a coalition of over 200 organizations engaging 250,000 people for a day of action, which resulted in the passage of Edward M. Kennedy's Service America Act of 2009, a $6 billion piece of federal legislation. Emily has worked tirelessly to serve her nation. Driven by service and servant leadership, Emily also chose to avoid politics until in 2009, Alan Casey decided to run for the U.S. Senate. Casey asked Emily to become his deputy campaign manager, and although he was defeated, Emily learned a great deal from his campaign and the power of politicians who choose to serve country before self. It took one campaign for Emily to see why our political system is broken. It is exclusive and has significant barriers that prevent transformational leaders from successfully running for office. It also took one campaign for Emily to resolve to find the leadership necessary to help our country solve the most pressing challenges of the 21st century. Her experience led Emily to found New Politics, an organization that disrupts the candidate pipeline and ecosystem to bring a new generation of servant leaders into politics. New Politics recruits and runs leaders who will put the country first and who will work together to get things done. All right, let's jump right into the interview. Emily, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very happy to have you on. Very happy. Emily, I wanted to start out kind of having you give me a brief description of what is New Politics.
Sure. So New Politics is an organization that recruits and supports service leaders. So those who have served in the military, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, or other have some kind of significant service experience. And we recruit them and support them in running for office or working on campaigns or working sort of in the political arena as a whole.
Gotcha. And we'll get into that in depth. But before we do, I wanted to get a little bit of background on you. So let's kind of go a little bit over your backstory.
Sure. It's sort of ironic that I'm actually working in politics because I really come from not the political world. You know, I was an AmeriCorps member. I served after college. I served in a program called City Year in Boston, working in the schools and in after-school programs and working with young people. So I was really a youth worker by training. And then my former boss decided to run for the U.S. Senate. And so he asked me to join him on the campaign. And it was really I sort of say it was like being in the movie The Matrix, where I had sort of swallowed the red pill or blue pill, and kind of all of a sudden was exposed to this entire world that I never knew existed. And I think for me, I realized going through that experience that I realized two things. One is our politics is broken, and that is the campaign system is very counterintuitive, and there are significant barriers to entry, which really prevent transformative leaders from successfully running for office. And the second thing I realized was, I had sort of spent my whole life in the service world and not in politics. And I sort of realized that if we really want to change the systems that are perpetuating sort of all these issues, and if we really want to take on the challenge of the 21st century, politics and political leadership is really key. And so that's sort of how I got to this place where I've sort of started New Politics in order to really, recruit transformational service leaders to get into the political arena so that they can really put the country first and change our current political state of dysfunction.
Gotcha. And you were AmeriCorps, working with AmeriCorps, but you weren't, you don't have a military background yourself?
I don't, no.
Okay.
I'm national service, not military.
Gotcha. What about growing up? Did you have any military connections?
Not really. My great uncle and grandfather, they all served in World War II. But so I didn't grow up in a military household. Gotcha.
So the first question that comes to mind with this is why veterans?
Yeah, I think being involved in the national service space, I got very much connected to military veterans. And I think realizing that, this population of leaders really have, spent their life serving, and they've chosen to put the country first. And I think that veterans really have the skill sets desperately needed in political life. They put the country first. B, they've had experience working with diverse groups of people and sort of bringing people together towards a common goal. And I think that they are about problem solving. And so they don't get sort of stuck in these sort of partisan infrastructures, because they really come from a place of service and a place of wanting to do what's best for the country and for all of us. And I think that, now more than ever, we need that kind of leadership in politics. And we have we have the lowest number of veterans in Congress in history. Before 1975, we had over 70% who had served in the military, had served in Congress. And then now we're down to less than 18%. So I think then I think you could look at the data around, last cycles or last year's Congress was the least productive in history. And I think that's not a coincidence that they are the least amount of veterans in Congress, as well as the least productive.
That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with you that, veterans, they spend their time in the military serving. And I don't know myself. I was in the Army for 10 years, and I don't know if I was all about serving before I went in, or if that's something that while I was in that got ingrained in me. But I know that myself and anybody else, any other veterans that I come in contact with, I just know from talking to them that feeling of service doesn't go away when you leave the military. That right. Stays with you. It's one of the underlying traits that I see in all of these other organizations that I'm talking to that are working with the military and working with veterans is that they've all got this feeling of service.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think the actual, sort of going through the experience of being in the military is very transformational for most people. And so you learn about servant leadership, and you kind of learn how to be a leader in a way that is about the greater good. And I think that absolutely stays with you.
So it makes sense then that going in politics would be a great step for most people coming out of the military. Why is it there's so few veterans that are in politics then?
So it's interesting, because I do think it's a very counterintuitive space. And I think that it's an exclusive ecosystem where I think a lot of, veterans, they just don't know, there's no like obvious entry points. And so I think, they're not part of that political ecosystem and infrastructure because they served, right? They left their homes to fight for our country and to sacrifice for our country. And so them coming back, it's a really difficult system to navigate. And that's what I realized, was that going through my former boss when he ran for office, I just realized how actually difficult it is to navigate, because it really isn't easy to figure out. And so I created New Politics as a way to be a really trusted guide and to navigate the space for veterans, because I think that was really key. The other thing is that they're actually, they need to be recruited, because I think they feel like for them it's weird to sort of say, hey, I'm going to run because I'm awesome, right? That's very sort of the opposite of who they are. They're about service.
Right.
And so it seems sort of strange to like nominate yourself to run for office. So I think getting asked is really important, sort of answering the call to serve again. And then I think that also, it's just counterintuitive in that it's weird. You have to put your name on a sign. You have to put your name on bumper stickers. So all of that stuff that it takes to sort of run really requires, so it's important to have someone to sort of help guide you and help you sort of figure it out.
And that's where your organization comes in.
Yeah.
And speaking of the organization, there's actually 2 organizations, correct?
Yeah. So we are 2 separate legal entities. We have, so New Politics is for sort of a political, once someone has decided to run for office, that's sort of the political piece. And then we have New Politics Leadership Academy, which is a 501c3. And that's really for sort of educating and providing leadership development and providing space for, service veterans to come through and to think about the larger just narrative of like, what is my calling in politics? Where do I fit into the arena? And how do I think about all that? And so that's more of a general education and leadership development arm.
I see. I guess the training is very important for somebody that's coming into it. They know that they want to change things. They know that they can, but they don't know anything about running or,
Yep.
how to do it.
Yeah. So we talk about it as like, what's your political pathway? And there's a lot of different ways to go, but sort of making the case that you're needed in the political arena, because these, they're really gladiators, right? And we need gladiators in the political arena. And so it's just figuring out, what's their roadmap?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what kind of programs does the organization have?
So the Academy, we are piloting a couple things. So one is we do sort of larger, just recruiting, inspiring events. So actually on Friday, we're going to be at the Massachusetts State House, and Congressman Seth Moulton will be there. And we have about 150 people coming who are service veterans to just take like a big picture and have a conversation about service to politics and what skill sets are from your service experience are actually really important and relevant in the political space, and having a conversation about that. And then, so we're going to do those events around the country in sort of different cities. And then the other thing we're piloting in February is what we're calling Answering the Call. And it's a leadership development program that's 4 sessions, and really providing some space and, getting veterans who think about what is their calling, and is, what kind of, in the political arena, like how are they going to answer the call to serve again? And so we're going to and so then that's what we're doing in February. And then we're going to scale that up so that we can provide more access around the country for people to go through that program. Yeah. And then the other thing we're going to roll out in the spring is more of a skills piece. So we sort of say it's in 3 sections, the be, the know, and the do. And so the be is sort of who you are as a leader and how does that translate into the political arena. The know is sort of what are the skills and tactics that I need to know to enter the political arena. And then the do is sort of the, like, actually executing.
The how-tos.
Yeah. So the know is what we're going to sort of pilot this spring, and teaching people and thinking through, what do you need to understand about a campaign? What do you need to understand about what are the pieces of it? What are the different things to think through? What are the questions that you should be asking and all that, like a toolkit, if you will.
That seems like that would be pretty ambitious putting something like that together. That's quite challenging.
Yeah. But it's important. And, we want to set people up for success. And that's an important piece of this.
Excellent. So the training itself, how does that work? Is that in person? Is that virtual?
So it's both. We try to make it really accessible, because I think the key thing with our community is that people are busy and they have jobs and they have, a lot going on, and they can't always afford to take a week, and go through a program. So it's 4 sessions, and there are 2 in person, the first and the last. And then there are 2, it's once a week. And there are 2 that are virtual. So we try to make it so that it's easier for people to be able to join for the whole program.
I see. And the ones that are in person, is that in a specific place, or do you have different places around the country?
So we're piloting this in Boston. We're going to do it at the Institute of Politics at Harvard, which is great. They've been really gracious to give us space. And so we'll do it there.
Very nice. Have you had some buy-in from other people in politics?
So, this is a really different kind of program we're piloting. It's really not done in the political space, and it's really based on 2 things. One is Professor Ronald Heifetz is a leadership development professor at Harvard, and he's really a big and he talks a lot about adaptive leadership. And so that's his thing. So we've taken a lot of his teachings around adaptive leadership. And then one of his disciples, Dr. Max Clow, is leading and developing the training. And he built, at City Year, he built an entire leadership development program for their AmeriCorps members, which is really revolutionary. And so he's sort of taking the foundations of that and then building on that for the political space. So it's going to be really unique. It's never been done. It's really different from what a lot of other programs do, because we think this is really applicable and important for our community to go through this type of leadership development program, and providing the space to sort of talk about who they are and how they think about their leadership in the political arena.
Emily, do you already know how many people are going to be involved in the pilot?
Yeah. So, we sort of had no idea if anyone would apply, to be honest. And so we just took our chance, and we actually had about 65 applicants for,
nice.
we were going to take 20, but we took 27 because they were just really amazing people that applied. So we couldn't say no. So we have 27 who are going to be going through it for the first time and being part of this pilot. And then we'll scale it and obviously make it more accessible to people going forward.
That is a great start. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're excited.
And I know that you work with at least one other organization because I met you through Hill Vets, Justin Brown. Awesome guy. Do you work with any other veteran nonprofits?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in it takes a village. And so, we sort of work with other organizations like the Mission Continues and, Team Rubicon, just as feeders for, hey, who are amazing people? Would they be interested in coming to one of our trainings, or, anyone interested in thinking about politics that we can help support? So, we're really about being collaborative. Zach Iskell in New York with his organization's great. So we've worked with them. So yeah, I mean, and then, on the political side, Vote Vets, we've also worked with and partnered with on a couple of our races, and they've been a great partner. And then the Truman National Security Project has been a good feeder for just campaign staff or other people networking for just sort of other types of roles and positions for our candidates. So yeah, I mean, it takes a village, and we love partnering with as many people as possible.
Yeah, I'd love to see the collaboration happening between organizations. I feel like maybe 8 years ago, it wasn't the case. It seemed like everybody was stovepiped, and now more organizations I'm talking to are collaborating. Emily, can you give me kind of like I guess like a walkthrough? If there was a listener out there that was hearing this podcast and they said, the person that she's describing is me, and I want to get involved and I want to be part of this. What would that person be going through when they came to you?
I mean, so I think the entire spectrum would be, they would come to our, answering the call sort of leadership development program for the first, for 4 sessions. Then we would sort of take them through that's module 1. Then we take them through module 2 in terms of and this is if someone has no background or campaign experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is starting from scratch. So we would sort of take them through the second module around the skills and tactics. And then we would help them create a roadmap or a pathway. And for them, how have they thought about, and through those, they would sort of figure out what's their pathway. And then we would help support them through that. So if they were like, I don't want to run for office, but I'd be a great campaign manager, then we would help kind of set them up and figure out the right path for that. If they want to run, then, we would say contact, New Politics, the political organization. And then we would, on the political side, we would really sort of take them through, let's talk about, what do you want to run for, where, and then what does that look like in terms of preparation, timeline? What do you need to do to get ready for that opportunity when it arises? And then sort of help navigate that space, build their team. When they decide to run, then we would help, build their team, and help advise on strategy and sort of make sure that they are set up for success.
Nice. And Emily, what is your vision for long-term for the future of this organization?
I mean, I think if over 50% of our Congress has people who have served, I think us being able to help get that statistic is the vision. I mean, I think if we have a country that has political leaders who are putting the country first over themselves, that's the long-term vision, that our politics actually is working. And you have political leaders, full of political leaders who have the courage to do what's best for all of us. And I think that's the long-term vision for us and us just helping to make that happen with other partners along the way.
That would be nice. Definitely a good vision.
Yeah, it's totally doable too. It's not like, I think curing like global hunger and climate change are actually way harder, So I think this is actually a doable thing.
Absolutely. I talk to veterans all the time that I think would be outstanding in the political arena. Absolutely. But yeah. I don't know if they know that.
Right. And even if they've thought about it, where do they go? They call up like their political party and just say, hey, I want to run. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to know. There's no one obvious to call. Right.
Right.
And I think
right.
that's why we started to exist. Cause I just think I was like, well, no one else is doing this. Other groups do pieces of it, but no one's really in the recruitment space and really helping incubate early stage candidates.
Well, I'm going to have to start funneling people your way because I definitely know of a great number of people, actually.
Yeah, I would love that.
So for the person who's listening that doesn't themselves want to get into politics, but they love the idea of what you're talking about here because they also want to see more service-oriented people in leadership positions. What would you recommend for them? How can they help you out?
Well, I would say that everybody has a role to play in the political arena. I think that not all of us will run for office, but I think we can all be great volunteers to support great candidates. We can be great fundraisers. We can be supporters, right? So there's lots of ways that we can be involved in helping ensure that there are great service veterans successfully running for office. So I think some tangible things are if you know someone who's amazing that should think about it, let us know. And we'd be happy to talk to them. If you want to learn more about campaigns and want to get involved, we're happy to connect you to some, campaigns on the ground that we are already, working on this cycle. And if you're just in general curious about learning more about the political space, we're happy to provide just education around that, because I think it's really important. So there's lots of ways to sort of be involved in the work that that we're doing and that other organizations are doing.
Excellent. Now, do you take volunteers?
Yeah, definitely. And so I think for us, we have two types of volunteers. We have volunteers that want to are interested in helping scale and grow our organization. And we're always happy to do that. But we also have a lot of volunteers that then we match up with campaigns who need help. So actually just this really great guy, Nate, has a really great policy mind. And I just connected him to one of our congressional races, that he's now their policy advisor and helping, write policy briefs and think about different policy ideas. And he's just volunteering, but it's great for him because he can keep his day job, but really kind of get involved in a campaign in a really sort of academic way that works for him. And so it's a win-win for everybody.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
How about donations?
Yeah. I mean, we're a startup, so we are trying to scale. So we always appreciate donations to our organization. We also appreciate any candidates that we're supporting. Everything is more important than money, but it costs money, right? So our candidates always need supporters and people willing to contribute. So that's always really helpful and valuable for them.
Excellent. Emily, is there anything else that we missed covering before we get into the final three questions?
Well, I'll tell you two quick stories about why service veterans make great political leaders. One is, so there's a Missouri race, Eric Greitens, who actually founded The Mission Continues, is running for governor of Missouri. And Missouri, 2 weeks ago, had serious flooding. I don't know if you saw that on the news, but it was significant and a lot of damage to eastern Missouri. Mm. And so Eric decided to suspend his campaign and send everyone on his campaign to help with recovery efforts. And he also sent out an email to every one of his supporters asking for help. And he said, either show up and come and help us rebuild and deal and work on recovery efforts, or you can contribute to the Red Cross of Eastern Missouri to help provide resources for recovery. And I just think that's just who Eric is. It was his first, obviously, thought of hearing this. And instead of being about him and his campaign, he was like, how do we help? And how do we solve a problem? And how do we bring resources to something that is needed?
That's that, like I said before, that feeling of service doesn't go away. And that's a perfect example of putting other people before yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second story I'll tell quickly is Congressman Seth Moulton, who was our first sort of pilot candidate. We took out an 18-year incumbent Democratic congressman in a Democratic primary, which does not happen in Massachusetts very often. And so Seth is now a congressman, and he, Gloucester, which is from The Perfect Storm, if you've seen sort of that movie, but the fishing's huge in Gloucester where his district is. And there's been some significant issues around, the fishermen really struggling. And so, Congressman Moulton, instead of, he could have just written a letter to the, I think it's called, I forgot what it's called, but the National Oceanic Organization that regulates the fishing, the things with the fishermen, which has been kind of a struggle and a tension. So he could have just written a letter himself and checked the box and been like, yep, I told you I'd do something. There's a letter. It's filed. There you go. But instead, he actually made it not about him. He actually got 16 members of the New England delegation to sign a letter together and submitted it, which was much more powerful and has actually moved the needle on some things that haven't been moved in about 18 years. And two, he didn't get the credit, right? It was about everyone together. So all the New England delegation looks good because they collectively signed the letter. So it's just about thinking about what is it going to take to solve the problem? And it's not about me, right? It's about what's the outcome and how do we get there? And that means, you know what? I'm not going to take credit for it. It's going to be about all of us and collectively just bringing everybody together to do this letter and to present it to the organization. So it's just, and that seems like a small thing, but, it's really just about their orientation on, just how do you frame problem solving and how do you frame servant leadership? And I think that's what makes veterans different and important in the political space.
Yeah. I love hearing the success stories like that. I love hearing, the examples, and those definitely are two amazing examples. And I'm looking forward to there being many, many, many more that you could point to in the future as this thing progresses.
Yeah.
All right, Emily, I think we are ready for the final three.
Okay.
Question number 1. Who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast?
Have you had the Mission Continues on?
I did. I actually, I worked with the Mission Continues on one of their projects. I'm with the Veteran Artist Program, and they did this awesome project in DC, one of the 6 cheapest or 6 poorest neighborhoods in the country. And this school was completely dilapidated. They brought, I think it was over 300 people in, and in a single day went through the school and completely renovated it inside and out. And I was able to bring some mural artists, and they painted some murals on the outside of the building, going around the building. And it was just amazing to see, what could happen in one day with the right, people and the right leaders, because all of these separate little groups, these little platoons, they all had a specific job to do, and to them, they had plenty of time. We've got all day to do this one job. But somebody from the outside looking at it would say, oh, you couldn't do that in the whole summer. You couldn't revitalize that school. But so because of seeing that, I already knew about the Mission Continues, and I was able to get Aaron from the Mission Continues on, and he did a great job. He was one of the first few episodes of this podcast.
That's great. Have you had Zach Iskel on?
I have not.
So he's great. He founded Higher Purpose, which is about they find jobs for veterans.
Nice.
And then he also has Task and Purpose, which is a online blog / online magazine newsletter. But they publish a lot of articles. It's really all for veterans, and it's really great.
Very cool. I will look into them. It's an organization that I haven't even heard of yet, and they're doing what really is needed right now. There's so many veterans that could use employment. My brother just retired a year ago. He's still looking. So
yeah.
Excellent. Okay, question number 2. What project has you fired up right now?
I'm really excited for the pilot in February, the leadership development piece. So I think I'm really nervous, but it's really going to be cool. And I think if we can pull it off and scale it, it'll be really game changing and important for veterans to think about political life.
I'm a little bit excited about that too. And I'm hoping that there's some listeners out there that want to get behind this and help you out with the pilot as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, question number 3, and this is the brain stretcher. If you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it?
So, I mean, we're such a baby startup still that would be game changing. And I would quickly scale. So I would just hire, a team and right now we are supporting about 15 candidates. And I think with that kind of money, we could easily support and recruit and train and we could do 50 to 100 a cycle. So I think that would be an amazing sort of thing to think about, is what would our organization look like fully scaled and operational, and how many more people we can bring into the pipeline quicker than sort of currently us ramping up.
Very nice. So for that person out there that has $10 million, I know there was a couple, 3 people that just won the huge lottery, the biggest lottery.
Yeah.
So for any of those people out there that might want to send you that $10 million or send you maybe a little bit less, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
They can go on the website, newpolitics.org, and send us a note, and we will, or they can call my cell, 617-233-4942, and we will gladly take it off their hands.
Excellent. I will make sure that I put those in the show notes also and make it nice and easy for everybody to get to.
Perfect.
Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, I'm so honored. I just really appreciate you asking. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to episode 40. What did you think? Let me know. Shoot me a tweet over at ParisJ13 and let me know what you thought. Also, if you have any other suggestions for who I might want to get on a future episode, let me know. You can also shoot me an email, jeremy@veteranpodcast.com. That'll get to me. And also make sure you get over to the show notes, veteranpodcast.com/040, and you'll have all of the links that you need to get over to New Politics and New Politics Academy and get plugged in with the organization. There are so many great veterans that I come across on a regular basis that would be amazing in politics. And if you know of any of these people, make sure you point them in the right direction. Get them over to the show notes, get them plugged into New Politics Academy, and let's get some more veterans and some more service-oriented people making the decisions that really impact all of us. I hope all of you have a tremendous week, and I will see you in episode 41.